I'm a frugal person. And if you thought frugal people didn't like to spend, then I'll go over my number one thing that I like to spend money on. And several more. But first, let me share a bit about why I'm frugal. And a lot of it has to do with upbringing and habits. So I grew up very poor, so my family just didn't have that much money to spend on things that they truly didn't need. And there was always an emphasis on saving money. So even to this day, I'm still like that. It's not painful for me and I'm not struggling just because I live a frugal life. And my biggest motivation for being frugal and continuing to be frugal is because I want to live a stress-free life with financial freedom. And like I said, while growing up I was poor and had a lot of emphasis on savings. But the one thing that my family wasn't very good on, which is the number one thing I like to spend money on, is investing. So again, the number one thing I like to spend on is assets, investments, and assets. So after my regular bills and expenses, things like mortgage, groceries, taxes, utilities, I've been pretty consistent and be able to spend about 80 to 100% of my paycheck throughout my career on just investing in assets. And that's because that's probably one of the fastest ways for me to reach my financial goals. Because that's how money grows money. Where the earlier you accumulate and invest money, the faster and larger it'll grow. And let me take you guys over to Excel and I'll show you in depth how this works. So right here, I have basically four scenarios. This is an investment scenario modeled off if you invest just a $10,000 by age into the S&P 500. And I chose S&P 500 because it's a fairly reliable index fund, where historically it's either returned anywhere from 7 to 10% on average year over year. So for this example, I'm going to assume 8% year over year. Now starting on the left, if you assume age 20 and every one of these you're just putting in $10,000 at age 20, 30, 40, 50, or 60, assuming that you're going to keep that money until 65, because that's roughly our retirement age. If you look on the most right, let's say at age 60, by 65 you'll have almost $15,000. By age 50, you'll have almost $32,000. Age 40, almost $70,000. And then age 30 and 20, age 30 is almost $150,000, and age 20, you're almost at $320,000. So obviously, the more years you have invested, the more money you'll get. But these gains, if you look at them, they're not linear. It's not a straight line. So I'm going to bring us over to a summary chart, which shows what your starting age, the increase of the money from whatever age to age 65, the number of years invested, and then if you calculate how much money per year are you getting. So this is simply just the amount of money you earned from your starting age to 65. And you'll see that money per year, it's not a straight line. If you start at age 60, you're only getting $939 every year. If you start at age 20, you're getting almost $7,000 every single year. And that's the whole concept of how money grows money. The sooner you gather the money, the sooner you invest it, the faster this will grow. And that's a simplistic exercise because a lot of us aren't just going to put $10,000 and leave it in forever. Let's go over to this next example. This is a comparison. I'm doing age 30 just because it seemed like a good age to start at. Assuming both cases you're starting with $50,000 in investments. Again, S&P 500, 8% interest rate. In scenario 1, let's say you're saving $500 per month. And that's not super far-fetched. There's definitely strategies that you can employ today to actually be able to save that if this seems challenging for you. But in any case, this is scenario 1 where you're saving $500 a month, which is $6,000 a year, versus $250 a month, which is $3,000 a year. And what I mean by this is a simplified example. You start with $50,000 invested, and each year after it increases, you put in your extra investments. So in this case, it's $50,000 increasing by that 8% and then adding the $6,000. And then next year it'll basically multiply the previous year and you'll add another $6,000. So to skip to the end result, by age 65, you're going to have almost $1.8 million if you saved $500 per month and invested it, versus if you invested $250 per month, you would have $1.3 million. And that is, again, not just pure savings. So if I take the amount from scenario 1, the 1.8 million, minus that by 1.3 in scenario 2, that's a gain of a little bit over $500,000. But in scenario 1, where I'm investing $6,000 instead of $3,000, let's take 6,000 minus 3,000 times 35. So over 35 years, I invested $105,000 more in scenario 1 versus scenario B. But as you can see, the gain from that is $411,950. So just to reiterate, at the cost of $105,000 over 35 years, you basically are earning $412,000. And again, that's why for me, I'm very eager to accumulate money now, because it's going to grow a lot faster if I invest it now. And that's my whole concept of if you're frugal now and you invest now, you're going to have to do that for a shorter amount of time than if you don't. Because again, if you start now versus if you start at age 60, it's drastically different. And this is just the S&P 500, which generally has fairly modest gains. But in the long run, you can actually be pretty confident that it's gonna keep increasing year over year. Maybe not every single year. And if you look at the chart, this is as many years as this specific chart will show, but it goes back even further. If you look at it, it overall will just keep going up. So example, if I just draw a straight line, it just goes up. But there are years where it goes down. But again, this is what investing is. So human nature, what happens is when it goes up, we're all happy, we keep buying because it seems like this will never drop. Once it decreases, people get scared. They get scared and they sell it, leading to a perpetual cycle of always buying high and selling low, and that's gonna wipe out your gains. So for S&P 500, the strategy is to put your money in regularly, and over years, you know for a fact it's just gonna keep going up. Not guaranteed, but history has shown that it has a pretty strong chance and probability of going up over the years. And that's why the number one thing I like to spend on are investments. These can be in the form of whether that's an index fund, the general stock market, real estate, self and professional development for myself, or connections with other people. But basically, I spend most of my money, paycheck to paycheck, on things that actually help me reach my financial goals faster. And this one is a bit of a dirty word, but yes, this can include luxury clothes, luxury cars, and luxury watches. For example, I had a friend whose business mostly had wealthy clientele. So he did spend a lot of money on fancy cars, fancy watches, and fancy clothes. He had an image to present to them. But not only that, these items gave him access into clubs who also had those same things. And these clients usually were wealthy. So that gave him access to these wealthy people who basically made up his clientele. So despite what he spent on luxury items, it generally yielded him a pretty good ROI. And there's a lot more to say about how to incorporate investing into your financial strategy, but that's really a video for another time. Now, the number two thing that I like to spend money on is actually tools. Like I mentioned, I grew up pretty poor. And I remember how it used to stress me the heck out every single time our family car had some sort of issue. Because my parents didn't have much money, so several hundred to $1,000 or more was a really big deal for us. It was unexpected and really tough on our finances. So that's why I eventually started learning to repair cars. This happened when I first got my own car at the age of 16. But to do that, to fix cars, you at least need tools. But the investment of even as little as $100 could be saving you thousands. And for me, because I bought an old junky car, which is 30 years now, but I still love it, I've probably saved from $5,000 to $10,000 in mechanic fees. And also, this one might be a little controversial, but general contractors around I live are usually very expensive, because that's supply and demand. Or sometimes they give you a outrageous quote because your job is too small and really not worth the money or risk for them to take on that job. But there's a good deal of repairs where you don't need a licensed professional to handle it. For example, one time my family had to replace about 5 square feet of drywall in the house. The quote we got for that was about $5,000. It wasn't ceiling drywall either, it was just the walls in an easy to reach place. So I'll tell you, the cost of that to do it ourselves was nowhere near $5,000. And there's also a lot of other small repairs that even weekend warriors can do themselves. Number 3 that I like to spend on is relationships. These are the connections that I'm talking about. This one is a little bit less of just a spend of money, though there's a little bit of that too, but more of an investment and spend of time. Because while I'm frugal with my money and I like to save, I'm also pretty generous with my time. If a friend wants me to help them with something, I'm always down to do it. I also like to learn skills to make handmade gifts that are unique and customized for my friends. Because my thought on this is, if you just buy a gift for someone, anyone could get the same gift off Amazon, and it's not very unique. But if I make it, it'll be customized, it'll have my unique flaws, but it'll also have my unique things about the gift. And I can also keep getting better at making these things, and that way, the better I get, the better the gifts will be, but it'll always still be unique. And heck, I've even helped random strangers on the streets. I've given rides to elderly people who were struggling to get home. I spent almost a year every single day volunteering at my local food bank. Over my entire life, I've probably spent over 2,000 hours volunteering for charitable causes at local nonprofits. So these are just some things that I like to spend on. Let me know what you guys like to spend on down below in the comments. And if you like this video, please like it, subscribe, and I thank you so much for watching.